that. Perfect. And I'm going to share my screen. And hopefully everybody sees the slides now. Give me a nod if you do. Okay, thank you. So again, my name is Courtney Morehouse. I'm a planner in the Environmental and Energy Department at Berkshire Regional Planning Commission. The Regional Planning Commission is basically like it's similar to county government in that we give planning services, or we offer planning services to the towns of Berkshire County. So we do housing planning, community planning, transportation, public health, energy and environmental services. So it sort of runs the gamut. I'm on the environmental department team, but we have lots of other services that are offered as well. So one of the things that I specifically work on is municipal vulnerability preparedness. It's a state program that sort of is a complement to hazard mitigation specific to climate related issues. Oh, I see somebody who needs to get admitted. There we go. So tonight, like I sort of described before, we're going to introduce what the hazard mitigation and municipal vulnerability preparedness planning process is. Everyone sort of just abbreviates this to MVP. So if you hear me throwing out that acronym, I'm not trying to be a government wonk. It's just easier to say than the mouthful that is municipal vulnerability preparedness. So hazard mitigation and MVP planning. We'll do a little bit of a review of the hazards that impact Cheshire in particular. Some of them are Berkshire-wide, some of them are specific to Cheshire, but we'll try to get as specific as possible. And then lastly, we're going to gather input on hazards and infrastructure, societal and environmental vulnerabilities, basically hear from you what hazards impact you all as folks actually living in Cheshire. So what is hazard mitigation and vulnerability preparedness? It's basically preparing for natural disasters and hazards before they happen. So this is different than emergency planning in that emergency planning says, what are we going to do once that natural disaster hits? What's the lines of defense? Who is going to do what? What's the chain of command? Hazard mitigation is preventing that disaster from having as large of an impact as it could. So this might look like upsizing a culvert that continuously floods because we knew it flooded in Irene, it's probably going to flood again, that sort of thing. Municipal vulnerability preparedness is very similar in that it also looks to reduce hazards and natural disaster, but that are specific to climate related changes. So MVP is a state-run program, which is sort of important to note because the funding works a little bit differently, and hazard mitigation is a federal program. So when you do a hazard mitigation plan, you become eligible for FEMA funding for hazard mitigation implementation projects. And a lot of times the different grants you go for will ask, do you have an up-to-date hazard mitigation plan? And when you go through this process, you can say, yes, we do. And this action was identified in that hazard mitigation plan. And then municipal vulnerability preparedness makes you eligible for MVP action grants. So again, more implementation funding, but at the state level, and it's a little more flexible as to what you can use it for. And I'm gonna mute you. Okay, I think I muted you. So together, you have a combined hazard mitigation and MVP plan. So it basically makes you eligible for both pots of funding. Oh, this slide was, I was clearly editing this before, so I apologize. But we'll move on to the next one. Basically, this was going to show you the hazards to consider, but there are things like wildfires, floods, tornadoes, if you were to have them. Some cybersecurity and invasive species have been sort of added most recently. So when we talk about hazards, we like to look at what are the most notable big events that have happened in the Berkshires. And how did that impact your town in particular, but also nearby towns, because what happens nearby could also impact your town. So the big notable ones were Hoosick River floods, 1938, and Hurricane Irene being the two big ones, big ones. Dam failures in Adams and Lee, and then tornadoes more in the South County, Great Barrington, and West Stockbridge. And then some of the lesser known events, but that are becoming more and more of a problem, like tick-borne illnesses and Lyme disease. And then most recently, wildfires. So one in 2015 and the Williamstown, Clarksburg, one in 2021. So these are the sort of events that we sort of go, okay, given that these happened and the impacts, how might we prevent those impacts from having a greater impact in the future? What could we do to our own town and infrastructure and emergency preparedness in order to lessen the impact? So these are just some of the impacts that have been sort of identified through hazard mitigation planning: flooding of the spruces in Williamstown, which was the loss of that mobile home park, and then a lot of damage on Route 2, Mohawk Trail, from Hurricane Irene. It's something that both got hazard mitigation funding based on the impacts that happened there. So what are we looking at now? What are the things we're sort of trying to look at and prepare for? Some of the things that we look at is changes in the climate. So rising temperatures and the sort of different effects those are going to have. Here we see that we've had a recorded 2.9 degrees more rise in temperature is statewide, which has also increased our growing days and our precipitation, because there's more water in the system and it's causing more floods. Warmer weather also means that we typically have a more conducive environment to invasives and pests. So in particular, tropical-like plants such as Japanese knotweed, which is more adapted to tropical climates, tends to grow better when there's not that hard freeze cycle, when there's more of a longer shoulder of fall and spring, and there's a more humid, warmer summer. And then the other increase we've seen, as I mentioned before, is the life cycle of ticks, which really are very strongly influenced by temperature. So warmer winters mean that there's less of a winter die-off and the tick population can get bigger. And as we've seen, Lyme disease is sort of on the rise in the Northeast, and other tick-borne illnesses that we used to not have are sort of popping up more and more. So this is something we sort of look at from a public health perspective, but it also sort of comes into hazard mitigation planning as well. And then the other thing we're sort of noticing, and this is a big one for the Berkshires, that storms are becoming more extreme, more frequent, and that they're sort of lasting longer. So NOAA found from the 1950s that there had been a 55% increase in precipitation in the Northeast. And this was more than anywhere else in the entire United States. So we are getting more rain than anywhere else. And that was specifically an increase that made sort of a stepped increase since the 1970s. In the 1960s, there was a big drought. And then from then on, we sort of saw more and more rain as the years went. And our last summer, 2021, sort of was an example. It's hard to ascribe any one season to something, but 2021, as we all saw, was quite a bit of rain, much more rain in the summer than we're used to. And a lot of towns in the Berkshires saw the effects of that on their infrastructure and culverts and streams. So when there's a lot more rain, a number of things can happen, but the one thing we sort of look to a lot is that in the water-rich Berkshires, we have an increase of what we call stream flashiness. That is, more water coming into our stream systems and really roaring through the system much quicker, and then sort of dying out more quickly, right? So it's not this sustained snow melt, it's kind of a rush of water and then a dissipation. And that stream flashiness can cause erosion, which can therefore cause loss of aquatic habitat and life. It can lead to increased sedimentation in streams. And from a town's perspective, it can lead to a greater likelihood of culvert blowouts. So those culverts that we had were sized for a certain expectation of rain and stream flow. And with more stream flow, it sort of overwhelms the system. It either floods the road or it washes out the culvert, like you see here. And these are sort of two examples of what stream flashiness can look like. It can sort of erode the side of the stream and the bank. I think you have something similar on Windsor Road, where that you have a road with the stream right down it, and the railing is kind of falling in. That's partly because of the stream flashiness happening there, as well as some other things we could probably get into. And then this other photo that I got from Chief Francesconi of a culvert that washed out on Windsor Road. So you can see right there where the stream sort of took out the culvert, and then with it the road, as it sort of had nothing to sit on top of. So the areas we're looking at in Cheshire in particular, when we talk about flooding and storms, is basically your sort of like main route corridor here. Everything in green is the FEMA mapped flood zone. So you can see it pretty much follows parallel to Route 8 there. You have the Dublin Road and then all of this area and the Ashwaubenon Trail here. So anywhere where there's like wetlands or a stream with a significant floodplain, we want to watch what buildings are in that area and make a plan for them as part of the hazard mitigation planning, so that we can properly prepare and alleviate flooding before it happens. The other thing we want to watch out for is the changes to winter weather. With warmer temperatures, it's going to impact winters the most, which is partly why we've gotten a heavier impact here in the Northeast. Warmer temperatures can lead to less snowpack, which again sort of leads to that stream flashiness. Less snowpack means that we're no longer recharging our groundwater at that slow trickling pace in the spring. We tend to have a drier spring soils, less groundwater recharge, which has not really been an issue in the Berkshires. To think of droughts and less spring water, we tend to think of ourselves as water rich, and certainly we are, but it's something to keep in mind. Oh, sorry, there are a couple more people in the waiting room. I apologize for having them wait. The other thing to look out for is what we're calling rain on snow events. So you all have experienced this probably in the last winter or two, where it'll snow and then it'll rain and then it will freeze and then it will either snow or rain again. And this sort of like creates more of a flood situation in the middle of the winter, whereas you might have snowpack all throughout, and then that happens in the spring. Now we're seeing it sort of more in the middle of the winter too. An increase in ice storms, we have sort of heavier, wetter snow, and then an increase in ice jams as well. But again, with that sort of freeze-thaw cycle, you can have it freeze and then thaw, and then the big chunks of ice sort of transported down the stream system that can lead to an ice jam. What's going on? Next slide here. All right, so this is another picture of Cheshire, and this is a good example of that ice jam freeze-thaw cycle. This is on Route 8. I'm sure you're all fairly familiar with this. This is Kitchen Brook, where that sort of pinch point on Route 8 comes, and the DPW has to go out there and break up the ice jams and monitor that so that it doesn't impact the infrastructure there. So you're going to see a change in snowpack quality. It's kind of getting icier, harder, and some of the other sort of freeze-thaw cycles issues. The other thing to look out for is dirt roads, which have always had a mud season, also are impacted by this freeze-thaw cycle. So as you get dirt roads that sort of freeze and then thaw some midwinter and then freeze again after cars have gone over it, can really put damage to the dirt road and cause an increase in maintenance to navigate that. So, and this we sort of talked about before. We haven't had too many droughts in the Berkshires, 2016 being sort of the most recent, but droughts can lead to wildfires. It's not something I think is that I hear as a big concern in Cheshire, but something to think about, especially as there are these larger stretches of open space that make it difficult to get into. But the other things to look out for is toxic algae outbreaks, that warmer, more nutrient dense waters sort of lead to algae outbreaks and increased plant growth and productivity, which I think is more relevant in Cheshire. So this is the timeline. We're in the first of the 2 public info/listening sessions. The next one will be after the town-wide MVP workshop. So that workshop is basically an invitation to all sort of the major stakeholders in the town, emergency planning folks, town highway, board of health, council on aging, sort of everyone who is part of a commission or has some sort of a big stake in hazard mitigation and MVP planning. And they all come to the table and basically define what the different hazards are, some of which of that work is being done now. And then they, more importantly, come up with the action steps, and those sort of get prioritized and reprioritized and reprioritized until you have a really narrow list that you can go to either the state or to FEMA and say, these are our top priorities. Here's the actions we want to take in order to reduce our risk around hazards. We then take that and we present that to the public in the second listing session in July so that everybody has a chance to sort of weigh in and refine those and give input. And then we put together the draft hazard mitigation and MVP plan. That gets open for public comment. We're predicting that'll be open in July. So everybody gets to take a look at this and have some nighttime reading material to put themselves to sleep by. And then finally, the plan goes to MEMA, which gets adopted and finalized by MEMA and FEMA, and the MVP program at the state level. And then as they give their comments and we finalize it, then the town adopts the final plan. So once you have an adopted plan, that's when you can go and actually start saying, okay, let's look at where we can raise funds to do road repairs and upsize culverts and that sort of thing. So that's sort of the general steps. So this is where you all come in. I got through that a lot quicker than I thought I was going to. So hopefully we get lots of time for you all to give input. But these are the hazards that we've identified thus far. Hopefully you can see them. I understand it's kind of a small map. I tried to make it as big as possible while still getting everything in there. But so far we've had interviews. The core team that I've been working with, a great group of folks who have helped me sort of identify some of these preliminary spots where we've seen flooding from beaver activity, erosion, ice jams, culverts of concern. So I really want to ask you as the audience, and you can raise your hands. I'm going to, let's see how I'm going to do this. I want to, here it is. If you raise your hands, you can unmute yourselves, or if you want to put it in the chat, places that aren't on this list, places that you see, where have you experienced hazards? What have been the biggest floods, natural disasters, etc. in Cheshire? Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
I think I gave you that fine writing paper that
you did. There's a small essay.
Going up Notch Road, which is just off of Windsor.
Okay.
I noted several items that were a problem on Notch Road. We are gonna have some problems if some work isn't done on the road itself. Just a little note to that, on the Windsor Road red dot there, that flooding in the picture that you showed, that's the one.
Yep.
That actually, what had happened there is because of a beaver dam that had broken,
Ah,
and it came
I was
down.
wondering if somebody would call me out on that because I looked at that and went, I actually don't know that that was a culvert.
Yeah, that's what actually took the culvert out.
Okay, so it was a beaver dam that
have-
broke.
We have up into, I'm pointing to it, you can't see what I'm pointing to. But the end of Notch Road up on North Mountain, there's a huge beaver dam up there also.
Over here.
One, and it's gonna, those are gonna cause some issues in the future, I would imagine.
All right.
There's one up on off of Windsor Road between Stafford Hill and Richmond, between Stafford Hill and Jenks Road. There's a huge beaver dam. That's the one that took out the culvert there on Windsor.
Okay.
If you're adventurous, I can show you.
Yeah, I like that. I'm taking notes.
Okay. I just concentrated on the Windsor and Notch Road, so in my area. So
Great. Thank you.
welcome.
Other folks. And I'll try to scroll through my screen here so that I make sure I see everybody, but also feel free to use the raised hand function if you can see that. I believe it's in the reactions on your screen, or you can just unmute yourself and holler out. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah. Hey, Bob.
Yep.
When the last time when we shut down Notch Road, excuse me, during the hurricane, it was a little further up Notch Road where water was infiltrating the road. How far up would you think that was that we were having the issue? Because it was, it was above the, above the red block there that we were having
It
an
had
issue
nothing to
with.
do. It had nothing to do with the Windsor Road. That's
Okay.
off of McDonald Brook, which is in front of my house.
Yes.
And there is a residence up there that has a culvert
Okay.
that could use some,
Some maintenance.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't believe that the landowner himself can. I think he's tried to do something and got stopped by environmental, and he tried to pursue, and so it wasn't working. So this could be something that might help him out.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's something that causes an issue. So that's something we should pinpoint. Yep.
Yep, absolutely. Good pickup on that, Bill.
Yeah.
I saw a hand. Jan. Yep.
You mentioned one of your pictures showed the bridge over Main Street and Wells Road right near Flaherty and Pitt Road, but that's not on your map here. In that last flood, the water was within a couple of inches of the bottom of that bridge, and that bridge is not in very good condition. So I don't know if you want to make sure you pay attention to that too.
That's let me just go back to the one I think you're talking about. Is it? Sorry, maybe I just went past this one.
That's it.
Yeah, tell me where that is, Flare, because I found this on iBurgers.
It's right where Wells Road becomes Main Street.
Wells Road becomes Main Street.
That's between Flaherty Street and Pitt Road. And a little more water in that one, and that bridge is not new. So
yeah, it looks bad.
Bob would be more able to say what the condition of the bridge is, but I just thought it perhaps ought to be paid. I think that looks like that's the bridge. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it is. Yeah.
Yeah, good catch. Thank you. I was wondering about where this was, and yeah, I think this is Irene. Pictures from Irene. Yeah. So thank you for that.
And there's still 3 inches. to Get the water under. It's about,
You want to test that theory?
no. Plus it's near where Jan lives.
Yeah.
Well, I
Michelle.
wasn't down at
Sorry.
that bridge the year after I moved here. I think it was 2004. I think there was something like 6 inches of rain in 12 hours, and Flaherty Road was completely flooded out. And I didn't look at the bridge then. I was still relatively new in town, but I noticed that there are culverts that go from Flaherty Road into the brook, and the water was reversed flowing out of the brook into the road
Mhm.
during that time. And I remember at that point, the Hoosick River went right to the edge of Main Street where Ed St. John lives. It was
Right.
right to the edge of the pavement then, and in 2004. So I
Okay.
mean, that might not have reached the FEMA threshold for 100-year storm, but I used to keep track of that as a surveyor, and that looked like a 100-year storm to me,
Yeah.
at least in our area.
That's good to know. Thank you for bringing that up. And dates are amazing. So thank you. Michelle.
Yeah, thank you, Courtney. This is actually for Bob Navin. And if you could go back to that last map that had the overall picture of the town. I think we've been having some beaver issues on Outer Wells Road, around the same area where the culvert of concern is. Bob, could you?
Here?
Yeah, in that general vicinity, I believe that there are some beaver issues.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm having issues now with them. I worked with a trapper in the fall. He trapped out a couple of them. There's still activity there that we'll be dealing with in the near future. We've got to get them out of there. There's no other solution at this time. We're just monitoring it, making sure they're not building in front of the culvert right now, because it did overflow the road once about a month and a half ago. So
Right.
it is definitely on my radar, an area of concern at this time.
There are beavers on the river right below Dublin Road in the trailer park too. You can see the beaver houses, and the water level there by the bike trail has been rising very significantly in the last couple of years.
So we
Yeah,
still
those
need
are
beavers here and beavers here.
Yeah, the
there's
beavers are
also
coming up from below. They're not coming down. There's beavers down below. If you're looking at the map, where the squares up above,
Yeah.
above East Harbor, they're coming from below, like East Harbor and, down in there. They're coming up.
I see. So I should move
there,
this to down here.
Courtney, go up to the other dot.
Yeah.
Up here. That's where I'm having the issue. And there, if you head towards East Harbor from below, that's where the beavers are more central.
Right here.
No, the other side of the road, down. Yeah, just go up with your dot a little bit.
Ah. My mouse keeps
Like the B
disappearing.
in Harbor, around the B in Harbor, right in that, they're coming up from that area.
Okay. Gotcha.
If
Okay.
you go down near the H in Harbor, that's where the solar field is.
All right. Great.
Anybody's looking for reference.
Be
And there's
near
also,
harbor.
there's a known beaver issue along the rail trail. So it might be, it's between Railroad Street and Dublin Road.
Okay.
I think it's probably all related, but that whole beaver area could be extended toward where it's the Meadow. We get a lot of complaints along Railroad Street to Meadowview Drive, and
Meadowview
which is
Drive.
right around where the D is on Railroad Street.
Okay. Great. So
Yeah.
just kind of like cover this area here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Just
Yeah, and also more to the east, there are 4 significant beaver dams. So if you see your Dublin Road line in
Yeah.
your purple, right in there are 4
Okay.
big dams.
So it
I know
sounds like
it's
kind
my
of this
that's my
entire
backyard. so,
squadron
Yeah.
here
right.
kind
Yeah.
of needs to get covered with beaver concerns.
Beaver population triples every year. Actually does.
Yeah, they don't slow down.
They're
Well,
active.
They're busy.
Yeah,
yeah.
busy.
Sorry,
It's all right.
I'll leave.
And then
It's a good-
aside, Courtney, the other thing I had in addition to the beavers and
Yeah.
also for Bob Navin. So on Outer Wells Road, I think after it takes that hard 90-degree corner, right? Yeah, and there we've had an embankment washout.
Okay.
And there was a fix, a semi-permanent fix, right, Bob Naven? To that area where the
Yeah,
embankment
I
slid.
wouldn't call that a permanent fix. I mean, that
Yeah.
was the best we could do. We put a lot of large surge rock in there, like 12-inch plus diameter rock. Last fall, we had a washout right to the edge of the road, and I put a couple 100 ton of that in there. It's okay for now, but I think in the future, it's definitely an area that we have to monitor, and probably we'll have to do some further establishing of that bank over some
Yeah,
time.
and I think, Michelle, this brown erosion maybe needs to get extended. I know that Bob did tell me about that. I think that's where this little brown dot is.
Okay, yep.
But because he talked about that erosion there. But it sounds like it kind of needs to travel up the road a bit.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
the long goal, definitely.
All right, great. Thank you. Is there any other
250-foot
areas?
drop.
It's a 50-foot drop. Is that what you said?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
No, it's
really
all of that.
significant.
It's more than that. We had a 60-foot stick excavator that couldn't reach the bottom.
Okay.
And that washout did slightly undermine the road, so from the road surface.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other additions to this map? Any other major events, any flooding events that stand out? I think I recorded 2004, we know 2011, 1938, I believe was another one, if we have somebody who was alive and remembers that one. All right.
Well, I gave you my list of
Yeah.
my wish lists.
You got the wish list. Well, if anybody remembers anything later that they want to share, I'm going to give you my email address. First, I'm going to take my next slide, if it wants to pop up. Here we go. So this is just a plug for those. You all are here tonight and you've taken time out of your evening. So I expect you've also filled out the survey. If you haven't already, please do so. It's a pretty simple URL, surveymonkey.com/r/Cheshire MVP. And this is another opportunity to really, give us your input. What have you experienced? What's the major concern? What are you most concerned about personally, but also for the town of Cheshire? All of those things then get compiled and really inform what it is that we focus as a group on in putting this hazard mitigation and MVP plan together. And if you have any sort of like more detailed, or if surveys just aren't your thing and you want to talk it through, we can also have a conversation over the phone or through email. My email's here, just shoot me an email and I'll be sure to follow up with you and give you my phone number and all that good stuff. But I want to thank you all for coming. Really appreciate spending the time on a Monday night, no less, to spend time with me and the group. So thank you so much.
Courtney, would you be interested in looking at some of these places?
Yeah, for sure. So let's follow up, Bob. I've been meaning to email
You know how to reach me, so.
I do, yeah.
Okay.